Hello, I'm Samantha, and this is Read That. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. If you're returning, thank you. If you're new here, welcome. Today's episode is all about how to survive a reading slump, the dreaded reading slump. We all hate it. I know we've all experienced this at some point in our reading journey, and it's probably one of the most annoying things, but also is probably one of the most common as well to happen among readers. So let's dive into why it sometimes might happen and how we can overcome it. As promised, at the start of every episode, we say what we are currently reading. I'm currently reading Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. It's one of her new releases that came out in January. So far, it's okay. I'm only about halfway through, so I'm waiting for the classic Frida twist to occur, but I've got high hopes for it. Okay, today's episode is all about reading slumps. A reading slump is basically when you keep trying to read books, but nothing is working. Like, you're just not finding enjoyment with any of them. Nothing's really sticking, or you just haven't had really any time to read. And then when you do read, you read the first few pages, or you read just like the start of a book, and you can't really get into it. Nothing's really sitting right. And you just really can't find any interest in reading, or you generally just don't have any time and it's putting you in a slump that way. So basically, why reading slumps can happen. So one reason why reading slumps happen is because of burnout. Now, this is when you constantly reading over and over again, and you may have just overconsumed reading. And so now you just feel the pressure to love everything you read. It could be because you've read too many books that have been overhyped and you feel you need to love everything, or you've just like read too many books in a row and you're just burnt out. It's as simple as that. The next reason could be genre fatigue. So this is when basically you've read too many of one genre back to back that now it just feels a bit predictable, or it feels all the same and nothing really different is happening. For example, if you've read lots of romance books back to back, eventually you can feel like it's kind of all the same thing and it's blurring into one. Or it can even happen with thrillers. You start to feel like these are predictable and you just need a bit of a break from the genre. It doesn't mean that you don't like reading all that genre. It basically just means you need a break. How I like to put this, to understand it, is basically if you love pasta and you ate it every single day for like 3 weeks straight, eventually you're going to get bored and you're going to want something different, but it doesn't mean that you don't like pasta any less. You just crave a bit of something different. So that's how I put genre burnout. Next reason why you can be burnout, life simply being overwhelming and just not having any time to read and just being too busy. It's not even that you don't want to read, it's you literally do not have time to dedicate to reading, or you just can't focus on reading at the moment. That's probably one of the worst reasons, to be honest, because it's literally out of your control. And the last reason I would say reading slumps happen is a mood mismatch. So what I mean by this is when your mood doesn't really match the books that you want to read. For example, you may be in the mood for like an airy-fairy romance, but you really wanted to read a fantasy book that requires a lot of concentration, but you can't really focus on it and it's just not pulling you in because you're not in the mood for that kind of a genre. You want something a bit different. So basically trying to force reading when you're not in the mood to read that specific book. So basically just not going by your mood. So when you're in the mood for something, but you're trying to force yourself to read one other thing, and it's just mismatch. Now that we have some reasons on why reading slumps can occur, let's explore some ways that we can fix it and overcome it. My first tip would be to switch formats. So what I mean by this is try switching the format in which you read. This could be trying out an audiobook, reading on a Kindle instead of a paperback, exploring short stories instead of longer ones, trying a graphic novel. Just switching up your reading type, switching up the way you consume your book can also make reading now feel a bit new and a bit different, and it can spark a bit more of that joy back in reading, which prompts you to want to keep reading. You may also find that it's easier to read when you switch the format in which you read on. For example, I know it can be easier to consume audiobooks because you can listen to audiobooks wherever you are and whenever you're doing something. So like you can multitask while doing it. Whereas sometimes reading a physical book, you have to be at home reading it like on your couch or something, and you can't really bring out a book with you. Like For example, again, it's easier to read on a Kindle when you're out and about because it's easier to carry with you. So just switching up the format can make it a bit easier. Next tip would be to read something short and fast. So what I mean by this is a book that's basically like under 300 pages, short chapters, moves fast. This can help break the slump because it's not really overwhelming to read a small book. Sometimes if you're in a reading slump and you go to read a massive 800 book page, it just feels a bit more overwhelming and makes the task seem harder to get over. Whereas if you break the cycle with a quick read, then you've already down one book and it just gives you more momentum to keep going, to get out of it. Next tip would be to reread something. So you could reread a book that you know you really, really loved. This still counts as reading, so don't question it. Some people don't like rereading books because they feel like it doesn't count because it's not a new story they're reading, but rereads do count. And again, it's a great way to end a slump because you already know that you're going to be engaged in the story. It brings you comfort because you've read it before. It's like rewatching a show or a movie that you love. It's like a comfort read. It's a comfort show. So rereading something can help you break that slump because again, it's a nice way to ease back and end it. Next tip would be to change up your reading. Sometimes you just need to change the genre of book that you're reading. Different genre, for example, if you've constantly read romance books and they're just not hitting anymore, try a thriller. You might find you love the genre and it intrigues you more. Or you could even be that you've read really, really heavy books that have lots of heavy topics in them. You may find switching to a bit more of a lighter book is easier to consume. For example, like a dark romance with lots of dark themes, going to a more airy-fairy one can sometimes make it a bit easier. And my last tip would be to just lower the pressure. A reading slump is okay, it's normal. The worst thing as well being in a reading slump is when you feel like, why am I here? I shouldn't be in it. I need to get out of it, and putting that pressure on yourself. If you put too much pressure on yourself to read, it starts to feel like a chore and something you have to do, and that can take the enjoyment out of it as well, and that's not something you want to do. So taking that pressure off can just ease it up. Reading's supposed to be fun and not something just tick off your list. So that's my last tip. Okay, there are my tips to get out of a reading slump. I'm going to give you 4 recommendations of books that I think can help you get out of a slump. These books I personally loved and thought they were really, really good. I gave them all pretty much 4 or 5 stars. They're really quick reads, about 300 pages each, give or take. They grab your attention, they've got short chapters, they move fast. Book 1 would be The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. It's a psychological thriller. It kept me gripped the whole time. The next book would be The Deal by Alec Kennedy, first book in the Off-Campus series. It's a great book to read, romance, about 350 pages, and also coming out in a show very, 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 very soon. So another one on the list. Number 3 would be Verity by Colleen Hoover. Again, a thriller, about 300 pages, perfect. And again, another good one to read because the movie is coming out soon. So that's also an added bonus to reading it. And number 4, I would say Never Lie by Frida McFadden. One of the best Frida books in my opinion, if not her best. And it's short, quick chapters, keeps you entertained and gripped the whole time. So a perfect way to get out of a slump. Just quickly before I end this episode, something I feel you want to avoid when getting into a reading slump, or to also avoid getting into one, is comparing your reading to someone else's reading. So comparing how much you read, how fast you read to somebody else can lead to a slump as well. And also it's not healthy to compare in general. And forcing yourself to read when you can't read something, or even forcing yourself to get back into reading when you're not there, can make it even more harm than good and make you resent reading. So I just thought I'd put that in as a disclaimer. Don't compare yourself. Don't compare your reading to somebody else's reading, and how you get out of a slump compared to somebody else, and how quickly you get out of one too. Just a PSA. Now that brings us to the end of another episode. Today's episode was a quick one, but I feel like it is a very important topic to talk about. It's very common and it happens to all of us when reading. So I'd love to know what you do to get out of a reading slump and what books you would recommend to also break the cycle of one. Don't forget to rate and follow the podcast on Apple and Spotify. And if you would like to follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok, it is Read That with Samantha. And again, if you would like video versions of the pod, it is Read That, the podcast, on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you back next Thursday. Bye for now.